Have you ever felt like someone is manipulating you without you being able to explain how? They don't yell at you, they don't force you, they don't threaten you. But something inside you shrinks, becomes confused, blurs, and before you know it, you've ended up doing what that person wanted, even when it wasn't in your best interest. If this has happened to you, it's not because you're weak, naive, or too good. It's because no one taught you how to protect your mind. We live in a world where manipulation isn't always seen as manipulation. Sometimes it's presented as concern, sometimes as affection, sometimes as, "I'm only telling you this for your own good." And other times, it's not even conscious. Some people learn to exert emotional influence because it was their way of surviving, not because they want to destroy you. But even if manipulation isn't always malicious, it always has the same effect. It pulls you away from your center and disconnects you from your clarity. Zen teaches something radical. A manipulated mind is a mind that has forgotten how to return to itself. Manipulation doesn't work because the other person is powerful. It works because you're disconnected. When you're not present with yourself, any gesture, any word, any silence from others can drag you down. Not because you're lazy, but because you're on autopilot. And autopilot is the perfect breeding ground for others to influence your decisions, emotions, and perceptions. And this is where this teaching becomes profoundly liberating. Manipulation loses its power when you reclaim your presence. It's not about controlling others, but about ceasing to be controlled from within. Today, I want to show you 10 practical and profound Zen techniques to protect yourself against any form of emotional, mental, or energetic manipulation. Techniques that require no confrontation, aggression, or distancing. Techniques that bring you back to your center, your clarity, and your inner strength. But before we delve into those techniques, it's essential to understand why you're vulnerable to manipulation. Because if you don't grasp the root cause, the techniques will only offer temporary defenses. You need to understand the internal mechanism that leads you to fall into draining patterns, so that it doesn't happen to you again. Manipulation doesn't begin when someone tries to control you. It begins when you feel you must justify your worth, when you feel you have to prove you're enough, when you think you need someone's approval to be at peace, when your self-esteem depends on another person, when your voice weakens due to fear of conflict. A clear-headed person is not easily manipulated. A centered person is not easily manipulated. A person who listens to themselves, who respects themselves, who trusts their intuition, cannot be taken away from themselves so easily. That's why the first step to protecting yourself doesn't happen outside. It happens inside. Think about how many times this has happened to you. Someone made you feel guilty for saying no. Someone made you doubt your emotions. Someone changed a story to make themselves look like a victim, and you ended up giving in. Someone manipulated you with silence, with distance, with praise, with subtle comparisons. And in the end, you were left with a strange feeling, as if you had betrayed your own voice. That feeling doesn't appear by chance. It appears because deep down you know you've strayed from your center. Manipulation always feels like disconnection. Zen describes this disconnection as a mental fog, a kind of inner fog where you no longer know if your thoughts are your own or if they have been emotionally implanted. You don't know if your decision arose from your own clarity or from someone else's pressure. You don't know if your reaction is authentic or conditioned. But when you begin to observe, when you begin to see the dynamics without judging yourself, without blaming yourself, without justifying yourself, something beautiful happens. The fog begins to dissipate. And that is the true power of Zen. It does not eliminate life's problems. but it gives you the clarity to see them without getting lost in them. Before learning techniques, you need to feel this deeply. You are not here to carry the emotions of others. You are not here to validate other people's needs at the expense of your peace. You are not here to sustain fragilities that are not yours. You are not here to give up on yourself in the name of harmony. Manipulation only exists where there is silent sacrifice. And that sacrifice always stems from fear. Fear of losing the relationship, of disappointing, of being judged, of being seen as selfish, of facing conflict, of being left alone. But Zen has a truth that cuts all these illusions off at the root. Whoever fears losing something is already being controlled. Manipulation doesn't need shouting. It needs your fear. It doesn't need strength. It needs your doubt. It doesn't need violence. It needs your need to please. Therefore, true protection is not armor. It is awareness. Awareness of your limits. Awareness of your emotions. Awareness of your patterns. Awareness of your intuition. And in that state of consciousness, Zen techniques are not strategies. They are natural extensions of your presence. When you're present, it's very difficult to manipulate you. When you are centered, no one can move your energy without your permission. When you know your worth, no one else's fault can affect you. When you listen to your intuition, you see coming what used to take you by surprise. Today, your training to return to yourself begins. Not to be harsh, but to be clear. Not to be aggressive, but to be aware. Not to distance yourself from the world, but to walk in it without losing your essence. And in a few moments, you'll enter the first technique, a profound teaching that will allow you to identify and stop any attempt at manipulation from the very first moment. Manipulation disappears when you regain your center, and the first Zen technique to achieve this is learning to return to your inner presence the moment someone tries to influence your emotions. It seems simple, but it transforms everything. Most people are easily manipulated because they react too quickly. They respond impulsively, out of fear, from a desire to please, from guilt. But Zen teaches something fundamental. Between what happens and your reaction, there is a space. That space is you. That space is your freedom. That space is your protection. That space is your clarity. That space is where manipulation loses its power. The first technique is called anchoring the breath in the present moment. It may sound simple, but when you practice it, you discover that it is one of Buddhism's most powerful tools for keeping the mind awake and preventing others from manipulating it for their own benefit. Here's how it works. When someone asks you a question that makes you uncomfortable, when someone changes the story to blame you, when someone puts emotional pressure on you, or when you feel like they're playing with your perception, your first move shouldn't be to respond. Your first move is to take one conscious breath. One single deep, real, present breath. Not to calm you down, but to regain your center. Because in that single second, everything changes. When you breathe consciously, your mind is no longer in the hands of the other person. When you breathe consciously, your body stops reacting out of fear. When you breathe consciously, you remember that you are not obligated to respond from impulse. Whoever controls your reaction controls your energy. That is a Zen teaching that permeates all kinds of human relationships. Manipulation requires speed. It needs you not to think. It needs you to feel guilt quickly, fear quickly, doubt quickly. He needs you to answer without giving you time. But when you introduce just 1 second of presence, you break the rhythm. You're no longer in their game. You are no longer trapped by his words. You are no longer reacting from an old pattern. You are with yourself. You are here. You are awake. And an awakened mind is not easily manipulated. Imagine a very common scene. Someone blames you for something you didn't do. Their tone changes, their energy intensifies, their words designed to provoke you into a quick justification. Before, you would have responded immediately, trying to explain, make amends, or appease them. And in that attempt, you would have lost clarity. And whoever loses clarity loses power. But now you can breathe. You don't respond quickly. You can't keep up with their rhythm. You don't give in to their urgency. You breathe. And in that breath, your intuition is activated. Suddenly, you see details that you wouldn't see before. The manipulative tone, the inconsistency in his argument, the hidden emotional intention, the subtle pressure that pushes you to give in. A single breath allows you to see the truth behind the scene. Because manipulation does not operate where there is awareness. Operate where there is mental haste. Zen teaches that conscious breathing is like turning on a lamp in a dark room. Manipulation is the darkness, your breath, the light. With the light on, no one can move you without you noticing. This technique is also used in monasteries to train the mind not to be captured by deceptive thoughts. What you experience in daily life as emotional confusion, monks call a mental phantom, an idea that wants to pull you away from your center. Manipulation works the same way. It doesn't physically push you, but it tries to pull you out of yourself. When you breathe, you return. And since that return, your voice has become stronger. Your body language changes. Your gaze lingers. Your tone stabilizes. Your presence rises. The people who manipulate perceive that presence. They feel it. And when they feel it, they retreat, because manipulation thrives on your absence, just as a fire feeds on oxygen. When you are present, its tool runs out of air. This technique also helps you observe your own body. Often, manipulation is detected through physical sensations before it is expressed in words. A knot in my stomach, a slight tremor, a tension in the chest, a discomfort you can't explain. Manipulation is felt before it is understood. Breathing is what connects that sensation to your consciousness. You breathe, and suddenly, instead of acting from confusion, you see clearly. This is not mine. This emotion does not belong to me. This guilt is manufactured. That clarity allows you to respond from your center, calmly, without justifying yourself, without making excuses, without falling into the emotional trap. Sometimes you won't even have to say much. Your presence will say it all. Conscious breathing also helps you stop a very destructive thought pattern. Over-explanation. When someone is manipulating you, one of the most common responses is to over-explain. You think you need to justify your decisions, your emotions, your boundaries. But that's not the case. The need to justify is a symptom of internal disconnection, not clarity. You breathe. And remember that your truth doesn't need to be embellished. You breathe. And remember that your boundary doesn't need permission. You breathe. And remember that your energy is yours. Manipulation loses its power when you stop reacting. And you stop reacting when you return to the now. At that moment, the control completely reverses. The person who wanted to influence you realizes they no longer have access to your emotional mind. You've closed the door without raising your voice. You've broken the pattern without confrontation. You've protected your energy field without aggression. A mind that breathes is a free mind. A mind that breathes is not easy prey. A mind that breathes becomes its own guardian. This is the first Zen technique to protect yourself, to return to yourself every time someone tries to pull you out of your center. Manipulation loses its power when you're present, but there's another equally important aspect that determines whether someone can influence you. Your ability to see the intention behind the words. Not the surface, not the discourse, not the form, but the hidden energy that underlies them. And that is the essence of the second Zen technique. Observe without getting involved. This technique is based on a fundamental principle of Buddhism. What you observe clearly ceases to control you. Most people get caught in manipulative dynamics because they become emotionally involved with what the other person says. You hear the words, but you also absorb the emotional weight that accompanies them. You're affected by their tone, their silences, their selective interpretation of events, their attitude, their hurts, their dramas. And suddenly, you're no longer observing the situation. You're inside it, trapped in the emotional story someone else created. When you get emotionally involved too quickly, you lose perspective. And when you lose perspective, you lose the ability to choose how to respond. Zen invites you to do something different. Be a witness before a participant, observer before reactant, conscience before emotion. This does not mean being cold or distant. It means being aware. It means seeing without absorbing. Listen without swallowing the emotional burden. To perceive without getting lost in what the other person projects. It's like taking a step back inside yourself. Not to physically distance yourself, but to see more. For better viewing. To see more deeply. Imagine this. Someone says a typical manipulative phrase to you, like, "If you really loved me, you would do this for me." Before, that phrase would have struck a nerve. Your need for approval, your fear of disappointing others, your desire to prove you're a good person. And from that automatic reaction, you would have felt compelled to give in, even though your intuition screamed that it wasn't fair. But now you breathe, you return to your center, and you observe. You notice the tone. You observe the emotional pattern. You observe the intention. You observe what he wants to provoke in you. Observe whether he is looking for fear, guilt, pressure, obligation, or doubt. And as you observe it, something changes inside you. You are no longer in the emotional trap. You're outside, looking at the trap from above. And when you see a trap, you don't fall into it. Zen teaches that manipulation is a game of mirrors. The manipulator projects, you react. He moves, you respond. He pressures, you yield. But when you choose to observe without getting involved, the mirror shatters. You no longer reflect what he needs to control you. You are no longer part of his emotional choreography. Manipulation requires your participation. Without your emotion, without your guilt, without your urgency, it collapses. Being observant allows you to notice what you previously overlooked. Minor inconsistencies, phrases that put you under pressure, calculated gestures, silences that seek to intimidate, exaggerated dramatizations, sudden changes in pitch, incomplete stories, insinuations that seek to create doubt, absurd expectations disguised as affection. When you watch, you see the whole movie, not just the emotional scene they show you. And most importantly, you begin to notice what's happening inside you. You can see when your energy shrinks. You can see when your chest tenses up. You see when guilt appears. You know when your intuition warns you with a prick. You see when your thoughts become confused. Seeing is power. Feeling it is protection. Recognizing it is waking up. When you observe the intention, you regain emotional distance. That distance doesn't separate you from the other person. It separates you from manipulation. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's not indifference, it's emotional intelligence. And something very interesting happens. The person who manipulates feels that clarity. He may not be able to explain it, but he senses it. He realizes that words no longer propel him forward. He realizes that his strategy no longer affects you. He senses that something within you is awake, and when he perceives it, he loses power, because his emotional game stops working. Observing without getting involved also shows you what belongs to the other person and what you are not responsible for carrying. Sometimes manipulation is not evil, but pain. Sometimes it's not cruelty, but emotional immaturity. Sometimes it's not strategy, it's fear. But just because it comes from pain doesn't mean you have to endure it. Compassion is not allowing someone to play with your emotions. Compassion is seeing their pain without letting it drag you into your own. Observation allows you to be compassionate without being easily manipulated. See without absorbing. To understand without giving in. Listen without submitting. There is a Zen saying that sums it up like this: "The wise man sees the wave coming, but does not become water." The wave can represent drama, guilt, pressure, emotional blackmail, distortion. But you don't become her. You remain in your clarity. This is the second Zen technique to shield yourself against any form of manipulation. Observe before you feel. See before you react. Notice before you surrender. When you become an observer, you regain control over your inner world. And when you reclaim your inner world, nothing external can distract you so easily. There comes a point on the path where presence and observation are no longer enough if you don't develop a quality that Zen considers essential: inner firmness. A gentle, serene firmness, without aggression, but unwavering. Manipulation thrives when it finds an emotionally malleable person, someone who doubts, someone who fears losing the connection, someone who gives in to avoid tension. Therefore, the following technique exists to counteract that vulnerability, establishing an internal boundary before the other person crosses it. In ancient Zen teachings, this technique is called the invisible door. The invisible door is not something you say, it is something you are. It's not a phrase, it's an internal stance. It's not a wall you build outside, it's a boundary you maintain inside. That limit says, your influence ends here. After this point, I decide. You don't need to pronounce it. People feel it. When you have that clear internal boundary, your energy changes. Your body feels different. Your gaze becomes more assertive. Your mind ceases to be a breeding ground for others' ideas. And the most powerful thing is that many forms of manipulation dissolve even before they appear, because your presence no longer allows for those kinds of dynamics. The invisible door is the technique that allows you to distinguish something essential. What someone wants from you is not always what you need to give. Manipulation thrives on that very confusion. And when you don't have that clear boundary, you get carried away. You say yes when you want to say no. You accept requests that aren't yours to make. You get involved in problems that aren't yours. You give away parts of yourself that you later miss. But when you have a firm internal boundary, something extraordinary happens. Before you answer, listen to yourself. Before you give in, you sit down. Before you commit, you ask yourself if that respects you too. The invisible door establishes that your well-being is non-negotiable. And when that's clear, nobody can push you without you noticing. Zen teaches that there are two types of no: the no that is said with the mouth and the no that is said with being. The no of being is much more powerful because it requires no explanation, no confrontation, no argument. It is an internal vibration, a deep alignment with your truth that makes the other person perceive that they cannot easily move you. People who manipulate often test emotional ground. They don't do it with direct questions, but with subtle tests. Can I make you feel bad with this phrase? Can I confuse you with this story? Can I pressure you with this silence? Can I ask for more than you give? Can I twist your perception a little more? Can I take you to my emotional territory? But when you have a firm internal boundary, those attempts have nowhere to stand. They fail to penetrate. They can't latch onto your old insecurities. They can't find the emotional crack they used to exploit. That inner strength creates an energetic environment where you choose your response, not the automatic reaction conditioned by fear. To build this invisible door, there is a very powerful Zen exercise. Every time you are about to answer something that involves emotional effort, ask yourself, does this honor me? If the answer is no, your energy withdraws. Your body feels a slight resistance. Your intuition tells you that it's not your path. That's your internal limit speaking. When you honor yourself first, manipulations lose their effect, not from ego, but from clarity. The opposite also exists. When what they ask of you truly honors you, you feel expansion, lightness, openness. So your response comes from connection, not obligation. Manipulation seeks to make you act from a place of duty, guilt, or pressure. The invisible door allows you to act from your truth. Once you develop this technique, you begin to notice behaviors that you previously overlooked. You notice when someone links their affection to your actions. You notice when expectations are unfair. You notice when silences punish. You notice when conversations are designed to lead you to a weak point. You can tell when someone is trying to make you take on their emotional responsibility. But this clarity doesn't make you aggressive. It makes you free. Inner strength does not reject. It simply doesn't allow anything to enter without your permission. It doesn't close your heart. It closes the doors through which manipulation entered. It doesn't distance you from people. It distances you from the dynamics that were hurting you. Zen teaches that a spiritual warrior is not one who fights, but one who does not allow his peace to be stolen. And that peace is born at this invisible door. When someone tries to manipulate you, and you have this technique ingrained, a very different internal scene unfolds. You no longer feel urgency, fear, or insecurity. You feel clarity. You know you can listen without absorbing. You know you can be present without giving in. You know you can understand without burdening. You know you can say no without losing your worth. Relationships stop feeling like a minefield and start feeling like a path where both parties walk awake. It all begins with this inner strength, an invisible door that protects your center without the need to create walls. There's a form of manipulation so common and subtle that many people don't even recognize it. Manipulation through the other person's emotional turmoil. It doesn't require sophisticated arguments, elaborate strategies, or carefully chosen words. Sometimes all it takes is for the other person to become agitated, exaggerate, dramatize, or play the victim. For you to lose your composure and automatically jump into save, fix, calm, or give in. This is one of the oldest and most invisible traps, and Zen offers a precise technique to neutralize it, not merging with the other person's emotion. In Buddhism, this is called differentiating the fields, and it means something very simple yet profoundly transformative. What someone feels is not automatically your responsibility. Their anger is not your responsibility. Their sadness is not your fault. Their anxiety is not your responsibility. Their chaos is not your field. Their reaction is not your identity. But when you lack this clarity, you become extremely easily manipulated. Not because you are weak, but because you are empathetic. Not because you're naive, but because you have a good heart. Not because you lack strength, but because you believe that helping is absorbing. And emotional manipulation finds fertile ground right at that point. When someone gets upset and you feel the urge to fix it, the control is no longer in your hands. The other person sets the pace of the dynamic, and you just react. If you play the victim, you give in. If he gets angry, you justify yourself. If they become distant, you reach out. If it breaks, you're responsible. But none of those answers stem from your clarity. They are born from emotional contagion. Zen teaches that other people's emotional chaos is like a flame. If you put your hand too close, you get burned. If you keep it at a conscious distance, you can see the flame without being destroyed in it. This technique consists exactly of that, being present without entering the other person's emotional field. Imagine you're facing someone who suddenly raises their voice, becomes dramatic, or changes the atmosphere with intense emotion. Before, your reaction would have been immediate, to feel the internal blow, take their words personally, and try to calm the situation by offering more of yourself. And there, without realizing it, you were already within their emotional field, where your every move became predictable and manipulable. But now something different is happening. You feel the emotional impact, but you don't absorb it. You perceive it, but you don't become it. You hear it, but you don't merge with it. You observe the chaos like someone watching a storm from behind a window. It's there, it's real, but it doesn't pull you in. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you aware. It doesn't make you insensitive, it makes you free. It doesn't distance you emotionally, it keeps you centered. When you don't merge with someone else's emotion, you recover something essential: your ability to choose how to respond. Your mind is no longer hijacked by the tension of the other. Your body doesn't activate from guilt. Your heart doesn't race trying to fix what's not your responsibility. Your spirit does not shrink. You just see. And from that perspective, you can notice things that previously escaped you. When the other person's emotion is genuine, when is it exaggerated? When it's a reaction to their story and not yours. When used to press, when it pushes you to give in, when he wants to lead you to a weak point. Zen says, if you take charge of someone else's river, your own will overflow. Many people who manipulate, consciously or unconsciously, do so by amplifying emotions, because emotion is a powerful weapon for disorientation. But when you don't merge with them, they lose direct access to your inner system. Your calmness becomes your shield. And something curious happens. When the other person fails to pull you in, the emotional intensity dissipates more quickly. Because sustained emotion needs a receiver. Without one, it loses its power. The technique also teaches you to identify whether the other person's reaction really has to do with you, or if you are simply reflecting something that person doesn't know how to handle. Many conflicts do not originate within you. They are simply placed upon you because you are approachable, understanding, or emotionally available. But being available doesn't mean being a permanent container. Wisdom lies in accompanying without burdening, listening without absorbing, understanding without giving up. Zen summarizes it like this: I can be with you in your pain without becoming your pain. That is the difference between compassion and sacrifice. Compassion observes, supports, and accompanies without losing its form. The sacrifice unravels, dissolves, breaks down trying to fix what was not born in his heart. When you learn not to merge with someone else's emotion, your presence changes. The internal feeling of living on alert disappears. The need to constantly protect others weakens. Chronic guilt fades away. The bonds are balanced. And what used to manipulate you through emotion now encounters a soft but solid wall. You're calm. With this technique, emotional manipulation loses one of its most powerful resources. They can no longer draw you into their world. You remain in your own, and from there, your true power blossoms. As you learn not to absorb the emotions of others, a new inner space emerges. This space is a kind of clear void, where, for the first time, you can hear your own voice without interference. And in this space, the next Zen technique for shielding yourself from manipulation arises: naming what is happening internally without judgment. This practice, known in Buddhism as simple knowledge, consists of recognizing your emotion at the very moment it appears, before the other person can use it to influence you. Manipulation doesn't work when you know what you're feeling. It works when you're confused. When someone wants to manipulate you, what they're trying to do is instill an emotion in you that will make you act. Guilt, fear, urgency, insecurity, confusion, doubt. The feeling that you have to do something now. And if you're not aware of your emotion, you'll act from that place without realizing it. But when you acknowledge it, when you name it, when you illuminate it, that emotion stops operating in the shadows. It can no longer be used against you. For example, someone says something to you that makes you feel guilty. Before, that guilt would have pushed you to justify yourself, to apologize, to give in. Now you acknowledge, I feel guilty. That's all. Without analyzing, without fighting, without justifying. By naming her, she no longer controls you. Stop being an invisible force that directs your actions. The same applies to fear. Someone is threatening to distance themselves, to get angry, to stop talking to you. Before, that fear would have driven you to do anything to avoid losing them. Now you see, I'm afraid. And upon seeing it, the spell is broken. Hidden emotions are open doors to manipulation. Illuminated emotions are closed doors. This also works when someone is trying to confuse you. Manipulative people often use ambiguous phrases, incomplete stories, and circular arguments that make you feel insecure about your own perception. At that moment, you might recognize, I'm starting to feel confused. And confusion loses its power to drag you down. Zen teaches, what you acknowledge, you cannot possess. Manipulation can only take what you haven't recognized. This technique is also powerful because it shows you whether the emotion you're feeling is truly yours or induced. Sometimes you discover it's not your fear, it's someone else's fear. It's not your fault, it's projected guilt. It's not your urgency, it's someone else's urgency. It's not your insecurity, it's an insecurity that has been transferred to you. When you name what is happening, the field is cleared. Your body relaxes, your mind clears, your intuition awakens. And an awakened intuition sees things that repressed emotion does not allow you to see. Naming your feelings also protects you from falling into automatic patterns. Some people have learned from childhood to please others, to adapt, to justify themselves. These patterns are activated like reflexes, but when you name what you feel, you stop the reflex. It's like you're telling your mind, I'm watching you. You're not operating on autopilot anymore. And the mind, when seen, is deactivated. Another profound thing happens when you apply this technique. You begin to feel your body as an ally, not an enemy. You realize that your body knows before you do when something is wrong. Your throat closes, your stomach tenses, your breathing changes, your chest contracts. It is the body saying, attention. But you used to ignore those signs. Now you recognize them. Now you name them. Now you use them as an internal compass. Manipulation loses its power when you learn to listen to yourself. Sometimes the emotion that arises isn't even negative. Sometimes you feel relief when you give in, or momentary peace when you adapt. But that relief is also information. Naming it allows you to see if it's true relief or relief that comes from avoiding conflict. Saying internally, "I feel relieved to avoid the tension" can show you that you are not acting from your peace, but from your fear, without trial, without guilt, without reproach. Clarity comes from observation, not criticism. In Zen, this technique is so essential that masters practice it even in the midst of intense conversations. While speaking, their awareness is alert. Now I feel pressure. Now I feel calm. Now I feel confusion. Now I feel firmness. This awareness prevents others from influencing their center. Manipulation needs to operate in emotional darkness. When you turn on the light, it loses its territory. And something profound happens when you start doing it naturally. You become impenetrable. Not because you become hardened, but because you become aware. Not because you stop feeling, but because you know what you feel. Not because you ignore your emotions, but because you recognize them before acting. Emotional clarity is a form of silent power. It makes no noise. He does not confront. He doesn't argue. But it completely transforms the dynamics. Often the person who manipulates stops doing so, not because you say something, but because they no longer find the emotion they could use on you. He can no longer find the blame available. He no longer finds fear accessible. He can no longer find the void through which to enter. You no longer find the doubt that once made you vulnerable. You have protected your inner self by illuminating your emotions. This technique not only protects you, it also heals you, because you begin to see patterns you've carried your whole life, emotions you've never named, wounds that have been operating without your awareness, and each time you recognize them, a layer of confusion falls away. A mind that recognizes itself cannot be led by others. A mind that becomes enlightened ceases to be a territory for manipulation. A mind that listens to itself becomes its own refuge. There's a type of manipulation so subtle it can go unnoticed for years. Manipulation through stories. Not stories in the sense of long narratives, but stories in the psychological sense. Narratives that people construct to influence how you perceive reality. The manipulator doesn't just want to change your emotions, they want to change your perception. He wants you to see things from his perspective, from his hurt, from his convenience. And to do that, he tells you a story where they are victims, a story where you are unfair, a story you don't understand, a story where they only want the best, a story where you're always wrong, a story where they are always the ones who suffer. Manipulative stories seek to make you accept their version of the world. If you accept that version, you are acting as they want. If you act the way they want, they no longer need to manipulate you. Therefore, the next Zen technique to protect yourself is this: to see reality as it is, without adopting other people's narratives. Zen calls this seeing the thing itself. It is the practice of looking at the facts without embellishment, without dramatization, without projections, without interpretations that others put in your mind. Manipulation works because it takes you out of reality and leads you into an emotional story that serves its interests. But when you learn to see the pure, naked facts without added narrative, the manipulation completely breaks down. Imagine someone tells you, "It's just that you're never there for me." That's a story. The actual fact, without the story, could be, "I couldn't answer your call this morning." The difference between history and fact is enormous. The story seeks to captivate you. The fact sets you free. Another example: "If you changed, I would be happier." That's a story. The actual fact could be, "This person doesn't know how to manage their own happiness." You see the difference. One chains, the other liberates. Other common manipulative stories: "Everything I do is for you. I always have to pay for it. You never support me when I need you. You are abandoning me. I gave you everything. Each sentence is an emotionally charged narrative designed to twist your perception and lead you to feel guilt, obligation, or emotional debt. But when you practice Zen vision, your mind begins to filter. What is the real fact here? What really happened, without emotional embellishment? What part of this story belongs to the other person and not to me? Am I reacting to a fact or to an emotional narrative that has been handed to me? Manipulation loses its power when you stick only to the facts. Zen says, the facts are clear, the mind that distorts them is not. When someone comes to you with a loaded story, you can listen to it, but not adopt it. You can understand it without automatically believing it. You can feel compassion without feeling obligated. You can be present without getting lost in the story. This technique also allows you to identify inconsistencies much faster. Manipulation often relies on repeated, exaggerated, or reconstructed narratives that change according to what's convenient at the moment. When you see the facts without embellishment, you immediately detect the inconsistency. But the most powerful aspect of this technique is not what you see on the outside, but what you see on the inside. You begin to notice your own internal stories. Sometimes, you tell yourself stories that make you vulnerable. If I say no, I'll lose it. If I set limits, I will be selfish. If I don't give in, they'll think I'm a bad person. If I don't answer now, he'll push me away. If I don't do this, he won't love me. These are not facts. They are stories. Stories that manipulate you from within. And just as you shouldn't adopt other people's narratives, you also shouldn't adopt the narratives that your mind creates out of fear. Zen clarity consists of seeing what is, not what you fear. One of the oldest teachings of Buddhism says, suffering arises when the mind clings to a story that does not match reality. When you stop clinging to stories, your own or others, you regain your inner freedom. You no longer move based on what others say happened. You move from what actually happened. You no longer act from the emotional interpretation they want to impose. You act from your clear perception. And that clarity is a shield. A person who sees the facts without narratives cannot be swayed by external emotions, confused by manipulative speeches, or weakened by exaggerated accounts. You see what it is, and what is enough for you. Little by little, your mind begins to operate in a different way. Where before you were drawn into stories, now you see the structure. Where you used to get lost in guilt, now you see the mechanism. Where before you were confused, now you see the intention. Whereas you used to accept painful narratives, now you ask, what is the real story behind this? Manipulation cannot thrive in minds that differentiate facts from stories. Clarity cuts through illusion. Presence cuts through the deception. Observation cuts off influence. Your life becomes simple, light, and honest. Not for lack of emotion, but for lack of distortion. Some manipulations don't aim to stir your emotions or distort reality. They seek something more subtle, to invade your inner space. Not with physical actions, but with demands, urgencies, expectations, or pressures that creep into your mind without your awareness. This type of manipulation is based on putting pressure on your availability, your time, your energy. When someone invades your space, you feel that you have to respond, have to be there, have to fix, have to adapt. And the Zen technique for deactivating this is one of the most important of all. Create an internal space before responding. Zen calls this the sacred pause, that brief interval in which you decide from clarity, not from pressure. It's a minimal space, perhaps a couple of seconds, but within it lies immense freedom. Manipulation feeds on your immediacy. If you answer quickly, you fall. If you give in too quickly, you fall. If you justify yourself quickly, you'll fall. If you explain yourself too quickly, you'll fall for it. The person manipulating you, consciously or unconsciously, trusts that you will act without giving yourself time. Because when you act without time, you are acting from a place of conditioning. But when you create an inner space, when you don't respond automatically, when you take that microsecond of awareness, everything changes. That space says, I make decisions from my own center, not from your pressure. And that internal decision transforms the scene. Imagine someone says something like this to you. Why did you take so long to answer me? What's so hard about answering right away? Previously, that message would have gone directly to your fault. You would have felt the obligation, the duty, the pressure. You would have responded quickly, justifying yourself. Sorry, I was busy. Sorry, I didn't see it. Sorry, I thought. And in that justification, the other gains power. Your internal space is shrinking. Your availability increases. Your freedom shrinks. But now you don't respond immediately. You breathe. You observe. You name what you feel. And you give yourself some space. It could be a second. It could be a minute. It could be an hour. That space breaks the dynamic. Because manipulation needs immediacy. Consciousness needs space. The same applies in physical presence. Someone asks you for something in a pressuring tone, with an artificial urgency, with an implicit expectation. Before, it would have been automatic. Give in, please, act. But now your inner self creates a small void, an inner silence, a moment in which you are not swept away by the other person's energy. And from that space, the options open up. You are no longer trapped in giving in or standing up. You can choose. You can decide. You can listen to your intuition. The technique of creating space also reveals the other person's true intentions. When you don't respond automatically, many people show their true energy. If it was manipulation, the pressure increases. If it was a reasonable request, the other person understands your time. If it was a control, the discomfort appears. If it was genuine affection, understanding arises. The pause reveals what is hidden. This is powerful because it teaches you that not all emergencies are real. There are other people's emotional needs that you have been carrying as if they were your responsibility. Zen says, if you don't make space, you can't see. If you can't see, you can't choose. If you don't choose, you're not free. Creating space is also essential because it deactivates one of the most common mechanisms of manipulation, the transfer of responsibility. When someone wants you to solve, decide, calm down, fix, or react quickly, they are trying to shift their burden to your side of the field. But in that inner space, you remember something fundamental. Nothing that originates in the other person's field is your obligation. You can come along, yes. You can listen, yes. You can understand, yes. But you can't carry what isn't yours. The pause also protects your energy from falling into reactive dynamics. Before, when something pressured you, you acted out of fear. Fear of disappointing, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing the relationship, fear of looking bad. That fear was what made the decision. But now it's different. Now fear appears, and you recognize it. And upon recognizing it, he doesn't answer. You answer. That difference changes everything. Creating a space before responding also allows you to remember your inner purpose. You might ask yourself, does this honor me? Does this respect my boundaries? Does this stem from love or from fear? Is this mine, or does it belong to someone else? People who manipulate don't want you to think, they want you to react. The pause destroys that system. A second of clarity can save you from hours or years of toxic dynamism. And here's the most beautiful thing about this technique. When someone notices that you no longer react immediately, they change the way they treat you. Not because you demand it, but because your energy no longer provides unlimited availability. Your presence becomes more solid. Your freedom becomes more visible. Your time becomes more respected. Your worth becomes evident. Manipulation requires urgency, chaos, and reaction. Wisdom needs space, breath, and presence. That inner space is a sanctuary, a sacred territory where no one enters without your permission. When you make decisions from that place, your entire external world begins to fall into place. One of the most powerful forms of manipulation doesn't occur through direct pressure, distorted stories, or even intense emotions. It happens in something much more commonplace: manipulation through doubt. Doubt about what you saw. Doubt about what you felt. Doubt your decisions. Doubt whether you are exaggerating. Doubt whether you are the problem. People who manipulate, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes intentionally, sow small seeds of insecurity that cause you to seek validation outside yourself. Because a person who doubts themselves is malleable, a confident person is unshakable. Zen offers a precise technique to prevent that inner doubt from becoming a weapon against you. Return to your original perception before it is questioned. This is taught in monasteries as returning to the first vision. The first vision is the clear feeling your intuition had before the other person's words tried to change it. The manipulation works like this. You feel something, but the other denies, minimizes, exaggerates, or reinterprets what happened. And little by little, you begin to doubt your perception. The first impression is what you actually saw, what you really felt, what really happened inside you. Recovering it means returning to your inner truth before it was pushed away. For example, you see a disrespectful attitude. Your body tenses up. Your intuition says, "This isn't right." That's the first view. But then the other one says, "You're exaggerating. It wasn't that bad. You don't understand humor. That's not what happened." You're very sensitive. If you forget your initial vision, you become trapped in its narrative. If you return to her, you regain your power. Zen teaches, what you saw before you thought is your truth. Manipulation enters through the mind, but intuition is never wrong. Regaining your original perception also allows you to notice when someone is twisting reality with emotional gaslighting. That technique in which they try to make you doubt your memory, your emotions, or your interpretation of the facts. But gaslighting only works when you stop trusting what you saw. When you return to the first vision, the deception dissolves. The technique works like this. You feel something strange. You don't rule it out. You receive an internal signal. You recognize it. You perceive a strange tone. You take it into account. You notice an incoherent gesture. You save it. Something makes you uncomfortable. You honor it, even if the other person wants to reinterpret it later. You don't let go. You don't turn it into an accusation. You don't turn it into a conflict. You turn it into an internal pillar. Manipulation is based on making you think that what you saw was not real. Zen is based on returning you to your original perception. When someone tries to convince you that you're not understanding, or that you're exaggerating, or that your intuition is wrong, you go back to that first moment where your body and mind saw clearly. The original clarity is very difficult to manipulate. This also protects you from one of the most dangerous patterns: emotional self-censorship. Easily manipulated people learn to invalidate themselves. I must have misunderstood. Maybe it's me. It's not worth making a fuss. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But when you return to the first vision, you don't become invalidated so quickly. You don't fall apart that quickly. You don't break down that quickly. Internal trust is beginning to be rebuilt, and something wonderful happens. The more you trust your own perception, the less emotional dependence you feel on the other person's interpretation. Before, you needed someone to confirm what you felt. Now your body confirms it for you. Before, you sought approval to know if you were being fair. Now you can clearly see what is coherent and what is not. You used to allow them to redefine your experiences. Now you maintain your inner truth without aggression, without doubt, and without fear. The first impression also makes you more intuitive. You quickly notice when something doesn't fit. You don't need a long explanation. You don't need external tests. You don't need to be convinced. Your body knows it. Your energy feels it. Your intuition recognizes it. And when you recognize your intuition, no one can use it against you. Zen says, the mind doubts, the body knows. And that bodily, emotional, and energetic wisdom is a natural shield against any form of psychological manipulation. Returning to your original perception does not mean denying the possibility of dialogue. It means not abandoning your center while you are having a dialogue. It doesn't mean closing your mind. It means not opening it at the cost of your truth. A person who trusts what they see, what they feel, and what they perceive internally is very difficult to manipulate. Not because they are rigid, but because they are aligned. Not because they are arrogant, but because they are awake. The more you return to your original vision, the more you will begin to feel your life regaining a consistency it previously lacked. They don't break you easily anymore. They no longer mistake you so easily. They no longer rewrite reality for you. They no longer steal your perception. You get your eyes back. You recover your inner voice. You regain your clarity. To times the handling. No appears in words, nor in emotions, nor in stories distorted. At times arises in something even further silent. The sensation of that you must justify, who are for, be accepted. No is a phrase direct. No is a stroke open. It is a climate subtle, a energy that push to demonstrate constantly you value, to explain your decisions, to give reasons for exist in the shape in that you exist. This mechanism is one of the further dangerous because no comes from the force of the other, but from a crack inside of you. And Zen offers a technique powerful for close it. Learn to hold you true without ask permission. This technique, no is confrontational, no is challenging, no seeks impose you spot of view. It is, in essence, an act internal of coherence, to leave of justify your limits, your needs, emotions, and your decisions. Forehead to people that use you explanation as tool for mold yourself. Zen says, the flower. No explains his scent, only blooms. That is hold you true. That is walk in the life without bend for fit, without reduce you presence for no to make uncomfortable, without explain each motion for avoid conflict. It is a state internal in he that already. No deliveries you energy trying convince to others of that your decisions are valid. The handling he feeds of you need of justify yourself. When you justify, you deliver Khan. When you explain in excess, you open he path for that each other interfere in you center. When adapt, you true for no to make uncomfortable, you allow that other define your boundaries. But when you maintain, you true in silence, without aggression, without urgency, without fear, something changes deeply in the dynamics. Imagine a scene that surely has vivid many times. You do something that is well for you, who respect you, peace, that honor you energy. And someone T reply with surprise, with annoyance, with confusion invented, with a comment designed for that doubts of you decision. And before, you would have given explanations long. You would have sought soften you posture. You would have treaty of that he other, no he felt bad. But now, no. Now you breathe. You observe. No T, you merge with the emotion of the other. You recognize it that you feel. And you maintain, you true. Hold you true. No is to impose yourself, is no abandon you, is stay in you, without back emotionally in view of the pressure. Is know that you peace inside, no is negotiable. Is know that you intuition deserves be heard before that any opinion external. Is know that the life T asks coherence, no justification. When you maintain you right, you energy. He comes back clear. And that clarity does that the handling he find with a wall gentle but impenetrable. No a wall aggressive, but a wall natural, like the firmness of a tree that simply this where has to be. The people that they try, manipulate, support in cracks, your need of approval, your fear to disappoint, you insecurity to the say, no, you habit of bend, for that the relationship, no, tense. But when you maintain you true, those cracks, they're closing. No, because already no feel fear, but because you choose no act from he. He Zen teaches that the true internal is as a lamp that no needs be defended, only needs be sustained. When the you hold, you radiate. When the you give up, you hesitate. And when hesitates, others come chance for move it. Hold you true means that you criterion already. No he collapses when he other gather he frown. That your decisions, no he disarm when someone does a comment, passive, aggressive. That you voice, no he turn off when the other person raises the yours. That you peace, no depends of the climate emotional of the other. The coherence internal is a field magnetic. When the active you attract, I respect. When the you abandon, you attract manipulation. He world reply distinct to a person that he maintains. And here occurs something beautiful. When you maintain you, true, also you maintain you peace. Already. No, you run behind of explanations. Already. No, you give you energy, treating of convince. Already. No T, you justify by feel, because need. Because take care of yourself. You worth already. No depends of be understood. Depends of that. You T understand. To you same. When this technique he integrates, the life he comes back further simple. The relations he they return further genuine. The dynamics he they clean. The conversations he they return further honest. The masks fall. The manipulations he undo. Because who no could manipulate you without that you. You will justify it. Now find silence. And that silence is a mirror. Perfect. Leave see to the other such as is. Hold you true. No stay away to the people correct. The about. Only stay away to who he benefited of you in security. And that no is loss, is liberation. Here is where he path. Zen reaches his spot further deep, the true protection against the handling. No is learned to defend themselves, but learn to be one same without fear. To dwell you body, to honor you intuition, to respect your boundaries, to no betray you calm for hold links that T wear out, to walk with presence, to choose with clarity, to talk from the honesty, to live from he center, and know from the reaction. The freedom internal. No he conquest struggling. He conquest returning to you. And other time. Each time further deeply. Until that already know his cracks. And when that freedom wake up, no one blackmail emotional can catch you. No one's speech can not to confuse you. No gesture can weaken yourself. No. Because T come back invulnerable. but because you come back to you, nature original, conscious, present, clear, serene. He Zen says, when he inside this firm, the world abroad, no can to harm you. That is he true end of this path. No as defend yourself, but as return to you. No is a method for protect yourself of the furthermore, but a method for protect yourself of abandon you to you same. When you maintain you true without fear, without justify it, without push it, simply living there, the handling loses his last door of entrance. And so, you walk by the life with a light different. A light soft, but firm. Present, but peaceful. Clara, but deep. A light that no needs permission for exist. A light that no he folds in view of nobody. The light of someone which, finally, has turned to home.